This video is going to see us drawing up our 3D model of the sliding lid box. Now this model starts off not too complicated. In essence, it's a stretched out version of the small rebate box. But because we add this groove in here to allow the lid to slide through, it starts becoming a little bit more tricky. Now, it's not that it's actually hard to do, but it just takes a little bit more consideration. Before we get into it, we'll just have a look at the sizes. Now, the base model is going to be 200 millimeters long. The main height is going to be 70 millimeters, and we'll be using our 12 millimeter thick wood as well. Where we put our rebates in the corners, they'll be on the longer pieces, which means our piece that goes in the middle will be 108 to allow a total size of 120. I might just add that measurement in here to show you. So the full measurement edge to edge is 120, but the internal piece is going to be 108 to allow for the rebates. We are going to have a 3 millimeter thick ply base to it. The lid is going to be 3 millimeters thick, which means that this gap is going to be 3 millimeters as well. And the height of this distance here from the top to the gap is going to be set at 12 millimeters as well. We'll just add a measurement in here to show that. So that height there is 12 millimeters. So there's quite a number of measurements there. It may pay to print out or do a quick sketch of this to have all these measurements handy, but either way, we're going to get started on creating this. It is going to require, as I said, a little bit of thinking. We'll start with the basics first and we'll add to it as we go. So as always, we're going to start now a new model and preferably use the millimeters template straight from the beginning. If you haven't used millimeters at that point, remember to check it over here, in that one, and make sure that we are using the millimeters, and 1 decimal place is enough in most cases. And as with all our models, we'll start by actually getting rid of our little person. All right, what we're going to do is start by drawing one of the long sides. So it's going to be 12 millimeters thick by 200 millimeters long and end up being 70 millimeters tall. So as we've done with most projects so far, we're just going to start with a little rectangle. Draw any size to begin with just to get the rough shape. Looking at our measurements down the bottom right, we're going to type in the numbers we need, which are going to be 200 by 12 as the width. Press enter, and now we can actually zoom in to that a bit closer. And we'll use our push-pull tool to bring that up, typing in the 70 millimeters that we need for the height. So essentially we now have our side piece. Now, this is our first real decision. Do we draw the rebates in first, or do we draw the groove in? There's really no right or wrong answer. I tend to draw the groove in first, but you certainly could do the rebates. It really doesn't make a huge difference. It's a bit of personal preference. I'm going to start with the groove, as I said. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape measure tool, just zoom in a little bit further, starting from the edge, come down, and I'm going to measure 12 millimeters. And that's going to give me the top edge of my groove. Essentially, my groove is going to be a rectangle that runs the full length of this. So it's going to be 200 millimeters long. It's going to be 3 millimeters in thickness. And of course, it's going to go halfway in, just like a rebate joint. So it's going to be 6 millimeters deep. So the easiest way to do this is with our rectangle tool, using this construction line to click to one corner, bring it across to the other corner. Again, it doesn't matter on size to begin with. My one's approximately 8 millimeters tall, so I'm going to change that to be the right size, which is going to be 3 millimeters, 200 for the full length. And as you can see, I now have that rectangle. Being that it's a separate shape now, I can take my push-pull tool and I can push that rectangle in. Again, it doesn't matter how much to start with because I'm going to actually type my 6 in to get the correct measurement. Once that's done, I don't need my construction line anymore, so I'm going to take my rubber and rub that line out. So I now have something that very much resembles the wood that you would actually have in the classroom. And I guess that's why I tend to put this groove in first, because it now looks and acts a bit like the wood that you would have in the class where that's already been cut in for you. So hopefully you've managed to follow this so far. Now to put my rebates in, again, we're not going to do the same as we would do in class. We're going to do it the quick way. So just from the end, I'm going to measure in, and I'm going to make that 12, typing it in to be sure. From the other end, in, type it as 12. Okay. And then I can draw my line straight down now that I know where that measurement is. Or, in fact, to do it a little bit quicker, we'll just undo that. What I will actually do is use my rectangle straight away, and I'm going to go from the corner there down to the bottom and make it the right amount. So it's 70 millimeters high, so that doesn't change typing in, but 12 millimeters wide, and I get that there. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. So see, the issue with that is it's actually filled in our gap or our groove a little bit. So it's not the end of the world. We can easily fix that up, but it may turn out that in fact that isn't the best option. So we could take that, we could then push and pull those pieces halfway to get the 6, to get the 6, and to get the 6. But again, we might find there are some issues with that. One being, of course, we've got this little piece stuck here. So in actual fact, let's go back to option 1 that we were doing originally. So I'll just undo that quickly. Let's actually go back to the idea of using our construction line. So we'll again go back to the original idea of 12 millimeters from the end, 12 millimeters from the end, and we will use our line tool just to connect that to there and the other side down to the bottom. Now the reason I did that is that we haven't ended up joining our groove. It's still a nice straight groove all the way down. We can see that there. But I have made 2 pieces that I can now push in the right amount. So I can take that piece in to be 6 and that piece in to be 6. So in actual fact, it's probably saved us a bit of time. Let's go down and do the other end. So our pencil tool, join those 2 points, and pencil tool from there down to the bottom, and I'll push and pull those in again by 6 and by 6. Rub out my construction lines as usual, and essentially now I have, oh no, I've got a little bit extra there. As I rotate it around, I've just noticed this piece, oh no, it's good. We might want to rub these lines out just for neatness. Don't have to. Not going to affect the actual model. It just looks a bit better. I'll do it just for the look of it. Very carefully, make sure I don't actually take the face out. If I took the face out, I'd have a gap. I've just taken the line out so that it's nice and neat. All right, so we now have one full side. So we need to, of course, turn this into a group as we've done with most things. So we're going to highlight the whole area, right click, and make it a group so that we don't damage it. And we can also then make copies of it. Right, so we are going to get a second copy in a moment. We won't do it yet, but we'll build our edge off it first. Now, again, there are multiple ways you could do this. You could go off to the side and draw a separate piece. It's going to be 108 millimeters long, 12 millimeters wide, and 70 millimeters tall. But the way I like to do it is to build it in place. It's going to be coming off of this part here and coming out to the side. So I find it quickest just to take my rectangle tool and actually draw a rectangle in the place where it's going to go. Now remember, I made a group before of this, so what I've actually done is drawn a rectangle on top of this group. It's not actually joined, it's a separate piece, which means I can very quickly take my push-pull tool and bring it out the amount I want. So again, any amount for now, and I know it's going to be 108, so that's what I'm going to do. So I've now made that piece. So if I zoom out, rotate a bit, I've got my end piece. Now, of course, I don't have my groove in it, and the groove does continue through. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to hide this group. So choosing it, right-clicking on it, and choosing hide, so that I can just focus on this piece here. Now, like I did before, I am going to draw my construction line coming down. So taking my tool, coming down 12 millimeters to match all the other ones. And this time I am going to use the rectangle tool. So I'm going to draw a rectangle from there across to this edge, put my 3 millimeters by 108. So I've got the right size, just like that. And I will use my push-pull tool to put it in by 6 and then rub out the construction line. It definitely was quicker to use the rectangle tool to do this area here, this gap, because I didn't have the rebates. I didn't have to worry about what happened in that area. It was a nice straight, easy shape, so it was quickest to use the rectangle tool. Just like with the other pieces, I'm going to now highlight this whole area and turn it into a group. Okay, now I want to bring back the side that I hid before. So again, I'm going to come over to my viewing option, and in the display area, I'm going to unhide all the model pieces. So I've now got everything, and you can see how these beautifully line up, the grooves line up, making it really nice and easy for a lid to slide in. So I've got two main pieces now. We'll just hide this actually. So what I really need is to copy one of these onto the other side and one of these down the other end. So let's just take the long side first. We're going to copy that, and then we're going to paste it in. Okay, bring it over here roughly. And we need to rotate it. Now, we can use the flip tools and all those things, but I think at the end of the day, the actual normal rotation tool is the quickest way, because I want to make sure that obviously the groove becomes on the inside but still is up the top. So I'm just going to rotate it around that axis 180 degrees. We've done this many times before. Okay, pressing something else to get out of it, just arrow usually, and then I'm going to use my moving tool to bring it down. And I'm going to use the fact again that everything likes to lock together to get this corner here to lock into that corner there. So let's grab it, lock it in, there we go. And again, if I rotate around a bit, we'll see how we have nice groove going down both sides. And we'll do the same for the end. We're going to take this end piece that we made, we're going to make a copy of it, we're going to paste it in, we're going to put it roughly where it needs to go, just over here maybe. I'll rotate it round, and then I'll put it in the right spot. So we'll grab our rotation tool. As with before, I'm going to just grab it along the top here somewhere, rotate it by 180, typing in to make sure I get it right. And then I'm going to grab my move tool. And again, using the fact that things want to lock together, to lock that in place. Okay, at this point, we have a box with the groove that goes all the way around along the top, so we can see it all the way around through there. Okay, but there's of course no base and no lid. I'm going to do the base first because that's actually quite easy. So what I'm just going to do is flip it over so I'm looking at it from the bottom. Just like we did with the small box, I'm going to take my rectangle tool, I'm going to go from one corner to the other. So again, remember we're drawing this, what is technically on top, or in this case underneath these other groups, so it's not actually joined onto it. So I can grab that whole shape, so it's one actual shape, pull it down by 3 millimeters to get my base. If I rotate back around, I can see my 3 millimeter base. Now I want to make that into a group as well, so a little bit of fiddling for a sec. I need to hide each of these, so I'm just going to hide each of these 4 sides for a moment, because it's a lot easier to grab something when I don't have to worry about accidentally grabbing all the rest of it. So now I can highlight just the base, right click, make that a group. And like before, I can bring everything back so I can see it. So now I have a lid. Sorry, a base, sorry. Hopefully you've been able to follow all of that so far. Again, in essence, apart from putting this groove in, it's pretty much the same process as how we made the small box. It's got rebate joints, it's got a base, it's got the same height and generally the same dimensions apart from it being a bit longer and wider. Now for the tricky bit, we need to put a lid in here. Now that involves, I should say, two very important things. Firstly, we're actually going to have to take one end and split it out so we get a handle piece and a bottom piece. And we also then have to draw the lid piece in, but it's not the full size. It's not just like the base. It actually stops, it goes all the way to one end, but it stops at the 6mm point at the other so that it fits in this gap. Now that will hopefully become a little bit clearer as we go. So what I'm going to do for a moment is, again, hide all the other pieces. So I can just work with, we'll take this end piece here. Now remember, because it's a group, I have to double click on it. So I'm now editing what's in the group, okay? And I'm going to do a couple of things. Firstly, what I'm going to do is actually finish this groove all the way through. So we essentially split it into two pieces. So I'm going to take my push-pull tool, maybe zoom in a bit so I can get this inside edge of the groove, and I'm going to push it all the way out. Okay. I then have to maybe just remove a few little lines just from the ends there, and you can see I now have that split into two. This is our handle, this is our base piece, sorry, and our lid is going to join in through here. Now, if I want to really do this properly, I actually should break this further apart and separate the handle into a separate group to the rest of this end, just like I would do with real wood. So there's a couple of things I can do here. Number one, I could try and copy this piece out and fiddle around with it in the group, take it out, put its own group, but I'm going to find that much more complicated. So in actual fact, what I'm going to do is just remove this handle piece from this particular group, and I'm going to redraw it in just a moment. Now, I know for a fact that it's 12mm square on this end, and if I need to, I can quickly check that. I can take my tape measure and just measure from corner to corner and look down the bottom. In my bottom right, I'll see it's 12 with a pop-up there, and again from that corner to that corner, try that again, it's also 12. So I know it's a 12mm square, and I also know, of course, it's 108mm long. So I'm going to find it easier now to just remove this and basically redraw it. So I can take my rubber and try and rub it out, but I've got all that to do. So a little bit like I did with the groove, I'm actually just going to take my push-pull tool, push it out to nothingness, and as you can see, it disappeared. And you might have noticed how my group shape just dropped down because it's no longer part of that group. So if I take my arrow and double click out, that is now the group without the handle. Okay. What I'm going to do temporarily over here is just draw a new piece. So it's going to be that 12mm square by 108 long. So there's a few ways again to do it, but I usually find everything's easier to draw the length of it first. So I'm going to make it 12 wide by 108 long. There we go, and I'm going to bring it up by the 12 that we had earlier. So I've essentially just redrawn that handle piece over here, and like with everything, I'm going to quickly turn that into a group. So I hope this is making sense so far. What I've done is taken the piece I originally designed that had the whole handle with the groove in it. I removed the top part, so from the groove upwards. So I took the groove out first, removed everything else, so this group just became the bottom part, and essentially I've redrawn the handle, the top part, just to the side for the moment. Okay, in fact, I'll even hide that for a second. Right, now we have to think about how the lid goes. So our lid is going to come all the way to the end of this piece and go all the way down until we reach the end of the rebate almost. So I can try and draw it based against one of the other pieces. So if I brought pieces back in, so let's say I bring everything back for a sec, I can try and draw it from this, say, corner here down to halfway and draw some lines in. But truthfully, this is one of those situations where it's just easier to work out the measurements. So what I need to do is go from one end of the box all the way down to halfway through this rebate. And we know that it has to be 6 millimeters because the wood is 12. So it's easy for me to quickly do this math and say, well, 200 millimeters all the way along minus 6 means it's 194 long. It's a lot easier just to do that math quickly. So I'm going to hide it again for a second. Actually, no, I won't do that. I'll just draw it to the side. So I know it's 194 long. I know it's going to be 108 wide because that's how wide the piece is here where the groove is. And of course, I know it's 3 millimeters thick because it's plywood. So it's very easy, again, just to quickly draw it to the side. So I'm going to draw an approximate shape. Okay, so the first measurement is going to be my length. So I just worked out it's 194 and it's going to be 108 wide. There we go. And my 3 millimeter thick, push it up by amount, 3 millimeters, type it in, and that's my piece there. And again, I'm going to turn that into groups. I just might do a quick little rotation round to get a better angle. Choose that. Careful, I just missed a corner, so try that again. That's better. And make that a group. So I now have all the pieces. I've got all the main pieces here. I've got my handle sitting to the side and my lid sitting over here. So let's just put the last few pieces together. So I'm going to take this piece and bring it in. So a little tricky. I want to grab the bottom corner here and I want to link it with this corner here so it's sitting level. So taking my move tool, making sure I've got the bottom corner and I want to link that in there. So in theory, my lid is sitting perfectly in that groove. And the final piece I want to do is get my handle. Whoops, I still got the lid choose there. Try that again. Grab my handle, move tool, and bring that up. And I've missed it. Try that again. Maybe zoom in a bit. Bring it over a bit. Let's zoom in a bit more. And let's link this corner with this corner here. So grab that into there, and there we go. All right. This may or may not be making sense. I hope it is. We now have all our sides. We have our lid, we have our base, and we have our handle. One last thing I like to do at this point is actually just to join the handle and the lid together. It's not really required, but it just makes it a bit easier if you want to move it out. So I'm going to make a group of groups, basically. So if I take my selection tool, select the handle groups, you can see all of it got chosen. Hold down Shift. Hopefully you can see the icon of my mouse cursor has got a plus and minus next to it now, saying I can join groups. So I click while holding a Shift another group. It's a bit hard to see, but I have in fact chosen the lid now as well. And if I now just make a group like normal, those two are joined together. So kind of got the lid area and the handle. The reason that can be useful to do is, let's say, a bit like the original picture, I want to bring this lid out a bit. Okay, it's not really moving along the groove, but if I keep the movement along the red axis, you can see that dotted line there, it kind of is moving. So if I wanted to just sort of open it up a bit to show how it looks, a bit like I did at the start, by having the handle and the lid actually joined, grouped together, it just means, of course, those two will move and it makes it a little bit nicer. So I've now ended up with something that looks like the original diagram. I can go ahead and put my measurements in. I can decorate this, of course, with colors and things like that. But that now has drawn a properly dimensioned sliding lid box. As I said, this is probably our most complicated, is our most complicated model so far. If you break it down and think about it carefully, it's not too much harder. It just requires that extra thinking, that extra bit of grouping, and just that bit of organization as we go. But if you take it step by step, stop the video, go back if you need to. Don't be afraid to try different ways of doing it, but you should be able to draw this up the same way I have here. So good luck, have a go, let me know if you're having problems, and I'll do my best to give you a hand.